Tour guides of Reddit, what's the stupidest thing you've witnessed a tourist say or do? Not exactly a tour guide, but I worked at a museum one summer. I was giving a speech on the sharks near the shark tank. At the end of it, people normally come up and ask questions. One woman passed me aside and whispers, "Is it true that men get periods on full moons?" I told her no, but to this day I wonder if that's just me. I'm a tour guide in a pretty large cave, and last week I had a guy point at a pile of cinder blocks on the side of one of the paths and ask, "So are those naturally occurring down here?" He was serious. I worked at the visitors center in Gettysburg for a while. Here are some of my favorites. Some of them personally overheard. Some of them passed down via word of mouth. Do they take the monuments in at night? Or just leave them on the battlefield? Why aren't there any bullet holes in the monuments? Oh, I didn't have any ancestors back then. Not a tour guide, but a park ranger in Banff told me a story about a couple of European tourists who asked him where they could see some bears. The ranger mentions a few spots where bears are known to be and cautions them to be careful. The next year he saw the same couple and they thanked him and showed him some pictures they had taken. In one of them there was a picture of the wife holding a black bear cub and smiling. The ranger kinda lost it on them. Oh my god, that could have gone so differently. In the hills of North Carolina, where Floridians flock in the summer to escape the summer heat, elderly Floridian gets out of his Cadillac and scans the surrounding hills as the mechanic pumps gas for him. You must have a lot of inbred types in these hills. Mechanic shifts his jaw from one cheek to the other. Yup, looks the Floridian over, but they mostly go back home in the fall. Spits. What do you mean? Why isn't African American PC? Are you racist over here? No, this is England. They're not Americans. Even after this explanation he was very upset and didn't get it and continued to use the term African American, offending Londoners everywhere he went. Visitor, you're not from around here, are you? Me. Actually I am. Born and raised. Visitor, well I've been coming to the south for 25 years and you just don't seem like you're from here. Me. Well my parents don't have strong accents either. Visitor, I just think I would like you better if you had a southern accent. Sorry that playing up to stereotypes is not in our visitors services manual. I'm here to talk about history, not recreate your southern fantasy. Bless your heart. I was on a tour of the Vatican and one person seriously kept asking when we get to meet the Pope. Sounds like a reason they wanted to tour the Vatican in the first place. In Wyoming it is common to buy bear spray, highly concentrated pepper spray, when heading into Yellowstone. One tourist believed it was bear repellent, lined up his family and sprayed all of them. Chemical burns for everyone. As a raft guide we regularly got asked whether we would be passing the same spot going through the same rapid later in the journey. We would reply, why yes, this is actually one of the only circular rivers in the world. Q. How deep is the river? A. About chest high on a duck. Not a tour guide, but I once overheard a tourist ask a sunset cruise captain in Key West, how many sunset cruises do you do a day? The captain just looked at him until the tourist goes, oh yay, and walked away sheepishly. But the sun sets at a different time in every time zone. It's possible for the captain to do 24 cruises a day. When do they turn on the waterfalls? Some lady to me when I worked at the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area. Lady, for $50, I'll make sure it's turned on for your family. Ha, I heard someone ask the same question at Niagara Falls a few years ago. I was on one of those big bus tours of San Francisco in the evening. Last ride for the night. The tour guide probably mentioned 5 times before leaving that it would be freezing up top and that no one could go up or down the stairs during the hour tour because it was dangerous. This couple was at the top with their infant, wearing nothing but an onishi with a thin bedsheet over the carrier. The tour guide suggested multiple times that they stay downstairs since it would be freezing. Well, it felt something like 30 degrees or less and the poor baby was crying the entire time before we had to pull over, after 30-40 minutes, so the couple could take their popsicle baby inside the bus to thaw out. Best parents of the year, choosing a better view over their baby's well-being. When I was in France touring World War I and World War II memorials, the actual tour guide didn't speak English, so I was commissioned to be the translator for all the British and American tourists. I was assistant to the regional tour guide, so I hope my story counts. We were at Verdun, and it was a pretty free-for-all tour where the kids could somewhat play alongside the crater's edges to really drive home the eeriness of a war zone overtaken by normalcy. Anyway, middle-aged American bimbo says, "Wow, all of the craters and hills here must have been really convenient for the fighting. They're lucky they picked such a location. Lady, are you for real? It's just like Berlin. It was really cool that the final battle took place in a city that was in ruin, really suitable for a climatic end to a war. Plus they did not have to worry about damaging some nice buildings, etc." I was visiting the National Mall and overheard a little girl asking her mom to see the White House. The mother yelled at her because they were standing right in front of it. We were actually in front of the Capitol building. My uncle was a tour guide in Iceland some time ago. He once guided a group of Americans around the country and stopped at a glacier in the middle of nowhere. He explained to the group that this glacier had been here for thousands of years and that it doesn't melt. The group then went back to the bus to carry on. But my uncle notices that a woman was carrying a big piece of the glacier towards the bus, so he stops her and says, "I'm sorry, you can't bring that onto the bus, it will melt." The woman quickly responded, "But you said it doesn't melt." My uncle stood there for a while, dumbfounded by the amount of stupidity that was in that answer, before finally saying, "Okay, but you'll have to put it in your backpack and keep it in there for the whole journey." The woman readily agreed and started to empty her backpack to make space for the big block of ice. Needless to say, this didn't end well for the woman, as the ice obviously melted in her bag. I was recently in Monterey, California. While I was there, I saw women walk up to a beach and say, "Oh look, a lake." No, it's the Pacific Ocean. I live in Monterey. This happens more often than it should. I worked at a not so little Australian zoo. Anytime a bus full of Chinese people pulled up, we would subtly have more keepers around the kangaroo petting area because they would repeatedly try and pull joeys out of pouches. So lucky our roos were lazy, overfed bastards. Tour guide in Copenhagen here. Late to the party, but most of the replies seem to be not a tour guide but, so I thought I'd contribute anyway. For some reason I have had a few tourists showing up for outdoor tours in shorts and t-shirts in the middle of winter. I honestly don't know what they were expecting. The wind chill can be brutal here. These tourists are more often than not Australians. I've had a couple of people ask me how they can get to Legoland, since Lego is from Denmark, and be genuinely disappointed when I tell them it's pretty on the other side of the country. You think if it matters that much, then you'd check that beforehand. People asking if I have learned to speak Dutch since moving to Denmark. A guy who used to work with me had a tourist ask him how to tell if you have a kidney infection, which was pretty bizarre. Two Canadian guys on a pub crawl wanted to pee in a shop window because nobody's around. "It'll be fine." I literally had to beg them to wait till we reached the next bar. Most of the tourists I work with are perfectly nice, and I don't think people are stupid for not knowing everything about a new city country. But sometimes people do need to use a little common sense. Recessed store windows legally double as latrines at night here in Canada. Sorry about the misunderstanding. Not a guide, but I recently returned from a hiking trip to Yosemite. I was astonished by the amount of people who were so unprepared for the strenuous hikes. I witnessed people wearing flip-flops and ladies carrying sparkly high-priced handbags on hikes. Good grief, surely they had some idea of where they were going. It's not like they were dropped off by a friend who yelled surprise. Haha, I had the same experience when I hiked up Diamond Head Mountain in Hawaii. So many girls and women wearing flip-flops and sundresses. When I was in Paris, I witnessed two older American women aggressively trying to force a store clerk to accept US dollar bills. She was like, "Just go to the kiosk down the street. They will change these bills for you and I'll be happy to sell you what you want." They were like, "This is good American money." When I was in Yellowstone National Park, a tourist or tourist deaf, a mix between a tourist and a moron, was trying to take a picture with some buffalo. He had his child, probably 3 years old, with him, and he was walking towards the buffalo. His wife was holding the camera, ready to take the picture. I knew that he was trying to put his kid onto the buffalo or pose with it or something else immensely idiotic. Fortunately, a park ranger stopped him before anything serious happened. Apparently this is fairly common in Yellowstone and most people are maimed or killed. Wild animals are wild. Stay away. You have been visited by the safety steward. Little upvote in 16 seconds for 16 years of safe grinds. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.